Okay, I'm going to start something new this week, and I finished up basically my executive axioms. I wound up with 18 of them. I could have gone on forever. I think there is something, the F laws, that was a book that went on forever, had 100, I don't know, maybe even over 200 different laws associated with them. And I just felt like with the 18 that I have, that I had covered enough. And so I'm ready to move on. So I'm starting kind of a new series, which is I've gone through and looked at a bunch of idioms and axioms from business. A lot of them you'll have heard of as I go through these, but they're kind of, they may have moments where they're correct, but for the most part, I find them to be not very good. And the first one is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, the origins of this are sketchy. So some say a guy named by the name of Thomas Lance, that was in the Office of Management and Budget under Carter administration, came up with it. But I've heard this phrase long before then. But his basically, he was quoted in using this word or this phrase, and his implication was that there was trouble with government, and there always has been. It's getting worse actually, but fixing things that aren't broken and not fixing things that are broken, and that's kind of what the article was about. And I think it came from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, if I remember correctly, well, as I was researching this. But you know, anytime I hear an executive say to me or say to anyone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, it's a red flag for me. And rarely, if ever, do you use this phrase in an organizational setting. Now, why is that? Well, it's, first of all, it's the antithesis of my tagline, which is there's always a better way. And it implies that things are running very well. And I see that in a lot of organizations, not so much right now, but there was a stretch there where when an executive or a CEO would bring me in, where I would sit down with them, and what they were really looking for was affirmation that what they were doing was right. And I basically told them, and these are typically introductory phone calls, but I say, well, sounds like you just want affirmation that what you're doing is correct. I said, I don't think that's the right mindset to have for me. You bringing me in, because I can find there are issues only because executives don't spend really any time with the listening to the interactions between customers and the organization, or even really listen to employees, especially as the larger the organization goes, which I've covered many other episodes. But your organization is already broken, or you can always find a better way. And it's one of the phrases that I get hit quite often with the word always. Well, nothing's always. Well, in this case, yes, there's always a better way. And so it may fit something, but I've never found it to be the right mindset. So I like to typically unpack that from a person, from an executive's brain, when I'm getting into it, or maybe even just somebody in management. But let me add a caveat to that, which is you need a method to mitigate your thinking. The way, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. How should I go about it? I think should be the better question. And I'm going to advocate for the 95 method that I have, because it's the things I just talked about, which is going to the customer, listening to interactions, listening to what's going on without judgment. And typically executives, especially, or people in management, immediately rush to judgment. They're doing it wrong. That isn't the way they were supposed to train them. And if you go into it with that attitude, then in essence you will learn nothing. And sitting down with me, so I'm always looking for a certain mindset that understands that continual improvement of an organization requires the thought process that either the organization is already broken, which I'm finding more and more these days, because organizations are under the gun with higher interest rates, and we don't quite have the free flow of cash that we had, say, even 6 months to a year ago, and so they are looking for a better way. But listening to those interactions in using my method, you never fail to find gaps. And it's not important that I see them. And that's one of the reasons why when I begin the process is, I don't charge as much at the beginning because I don't know whether it's something that I can help with or not. Typically it is, but the only way that you can be helped is want to be helped. And so I'll find gaps. I'll put the executive or a person in management in a place where they can listen to what I heard and start to say, okay, so are you hearing anything here? Are you seeing any gaps between, what a better way might look like? And I'll give them some exercises to go through so they can begin to see it themselves. And that really begins the transformation of any executive into kind of the mindset you really need to be effective. This whole podcast is about being effective. And then we begin to find fixes. But we don't do it as executives. And it's one other thing you have to steer executives away from is they want to fix it. It's the judgment thing. And then all I have to do is, well, if they just would have listened to us at the beginning, but the question really needs to be, why are people doing it differently than what you intended, if that's the problem, which usually isn't, or a very small portion of a broader problem. But, when you begin to look for fixes, you want the people that are doing the work to find the fixes, not you. You may have a very good idea of what might be there, but if you're going to implement any solution within an organization, you need the people doing the work to kind of come up with it. Now, let them listen to the things that you heard, the interactions. Let them identify the gaps also, with the exercise that I take the executives through. But, let them come up with some fixes, because they may come up with something a lot better than what you're thinking. And at some point, you might be able to, add value, or maybe you say, this is what I heard, but you don't want to do that first, right? Because everybody's brain shuts down when an executive talks. Oh, well, they've already got a solution, and they don't. But and even if they do, it's typically not the optimal one, or it's not going to be one that the people doing the work, because they don't see what the executives see. And if they have sat down and listened to interactions between customer and their organization, they won't understand what the solution is. They need to help. They need to be brought around to uncover it also, so that we kind of get the mindset straight. But regardless of that, if they begin to come up with fixes, which employees are perfectly capable of, and allow you to begin to trust them, if you will, to not only come up with solutions, but to tell you when something's changing. If you wait for a report, it's too late, and never is the report going to say, do this, but an employee can, if you set the system up and you design the system for them to be able to do that. But once you find fixes, then you do them on a very small scale. You don't have to blow up the whole system, right? You just try it out with a few customers. Hey, we're trying some different things. This is kind of what we've learned. What do you think? Does this work better for you? And usually the stuff at the beginning is so blatantly obvious, but organizations don't see it, and they don't see it because they don't spend time listening to the interactions with the right set of thinking and listening and seeing what's going on, and because they don't, they miss great opportunities to improve their organization. And it's something that you don't know how you are as an organization when you're all talking internally. It's that external feedback that needs to be a constant, and it becomes a touchstone. I've mentioned in previous episodes, I build what's called a customer creed in each organization. And even competitors come up with different things because they have different customers. They have different systems. They have different processes. They have different rules, different executives. They have different management. They have different employee. There's so many things that are different that the outcomes are never the same. They're always different by even competitors in the same industry, just by virtue of those things that I just talked about. So it's important for organizations to bring someone from the outside, whether it's me or someone else, to give them a view, to give them some different thinking, just to look at their organization and uncover ways to make it better. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover this week. I don't know how long. I don't have a set list of what I guess I'm calling anti-axioms that this series will be. But I've got a few written down and that I've heard over the years. But anyway, I thought I'd start with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We all hear it. It's unuseful for the most part. That's what I wanted to cover. And remember, there's always a better way.